sure that your questions get asked of him. But to start us off, Cal, tell me about your debut in the big leagues in Atlanta.
Yeah. So baseball is kind of unique in the sense that most players who are drafted actually don't go directly to the top level. So, in basketball, for instance, Zion Williamson goes first overall, and then you watch him play the following season for an NBA team. For me, I played 2 or 3 years in the minor leagues. My final year in AAA, we were in Las Vegas playing at, in my opinion, the most dangerous park to pitch at in America. Home runs everywhere. And I got a call from our GM, and it was kind of along the lines of like, we're going to watch how this start goes. And then, if things go good, you're going to go to the big leagues. So if there wasn't enough pressure already, there certainly was after that, but it went well. And I was up to Atlanta 4 days later to pitch against a pretty good Atlanta Braves team. Uh-oh. Have we lost?
I think we lost Christy there for a second. So while we let Christy get back into the call here, we can kind of jump right in with another. Oh, there she is. She's back.
Sorry about that. This is the beauty of working remotely. I'm up north of the city, so I'm not getting great Wi-Fi up here. I apologize. So did you get a chance to tell everyone about your debut in Atlanta?
Yep, and it went well. I think I went 5 2/3 or 6 innings, so it was a good first go of it. And it's amazing. Once that first one's done, you're just like overall nervousness and bad energy kind of just dissipates, and then you start enjoying it.
You had a super exciting story about your first major league game in Toronto as well.
Yeah, so I actually was pitching all right in my first couple starts, not great, just pretty good. And then just luck would have it, I don't want to, someone can fact check me here, but I believe the last time the San Diego Padres played in Toronto was definitely when it was called the Sky Dome. So it doesn't happen often. We don't we don't play across divisions very often. And it happened to be, we were playing Toronto in Toronto, and it was my third start ever. And it was like, it just never happens. It was so rare. I hadn't got my first big league win yet. And I did. I got it in Toronto in front of like 450 of family and friends. Just crazy, crazy, crazy. A lot of fun. Definitely couldn't have really drawn it up better than how that all went down.
That's awesome. So we've got lots of questions coming in. I'm going to apologize to everyone if you sent in a message before the first question I'm seeing. I lost all the questions that came in before I disconnected. The first one I'm seeing is at what age, it starts with at what age did you know you wanted to be a pitcher? So if you typed a question before that, please type it again. I'm sorry I missed it. It got deleted. So starting with this one, Dave would love to know, what age did you know that you wanted to be a pitcher? And was it a choice you made, or was it were you perhaps pushed in that direction because you are not a first generation Major League Baseball player?
Yeah. What's funny is that into college, I didn't want to be just a pitcher. I wanted to hit as well. I think a lot of times, both your size and what you're good at, and your skill set actually pushes you in a direction. For me, it became clear kind of as I was leaving high school, entering college, that I was probably advanced for my age as a pitcher and maybe raw for my age as a hitter. And to compete at that kind of school, at that kind of level of baseball, I really needed to finally make a decision and commit kind of 100% of my energy towards one thing. So I went the pitching route. Yes, my dad also pitched, so maybe there was a little bit of a little lean towards that. I had a little better coaching on the pitching side, but I think just like knowing my body type, knowing what I'm good at, that was probably always going to be the end result.
Nice. So you and I we were just chatting before we jumped on the call with everyone else about what happened today, and one of the questions from the crowd is related. JP would like to know, basically, guys, just so you know, Cal was telling us that they got back to doing some practicing today, which is interesting how they're working on that. But JP would like to know, if you had to return to play without fans, how much does that impact you? And is there any position that gets a benefit by not having a crowd live in the stands. And interestingly, Elspeth wants to know, how does the roar of the crowd affect you? So sort of both
Okay.
related questions. What do you think about all that?
Yeah. So let's start with the coronavirus, because I think that that's kind of like top of everyone's head. We are pretty much shut down. Like, the team is not really allowed to or is running anything. However, we're kind of in a sticky situation here, because we want to be ready so that we can give you guys baseball the second that we're capable of. So it's kind of been this give and take, like how much can we do to continue to prepare and keep our bodies in shape while still following all social guidelines, all like government rules. We are not above the law. So just yesterday, I believe they opened up the beaches here in San Diego. I don't want to, don't go. If there's someone in California on this chat, don't go by my word. Check your listings and everything. But so there was a park that was open to play catch in. So I've kind of transitioned from mostly throwing on my own to now playing catch with a partner. I realize it's not ideal. We're both touching a baseball, but we're doing our best. We're attempting to stay socially distanced and still get our work in. In terms of the no fans in the stands, it's a tough one. For me, fans mean something. They bring a lot to the game. I get to do the thing I do because people like you care about our sport. So to imagine playing this sport without fans is like, it doesn't even make sense. However, I think that I speak for most of us when I say we'd rather have some baseball with no fans than no baseball at all. So for me, it's like, if this is the only safe option, I think we need to move forward with it. Now, I'm not saying move forward with it now. I think that, again, I will always kind of defer to people a lot smarter than me. They tell me when it's safe and good to go back, and I'll be there. Unfortunately, I don't have any inside info for you guys. I don't know when that's going to be or where that's going to be, but hopefully soon. And then I think the last question was, do fans affect you, and which position do they affect the most? I think by the time you've made it to the big leagues, you've had quite a few experiences, or you've been exposed to fanfare at a pretty big scale. So I actually don't feel like I notice it very much anymore. And to be quite honest with you, like, it takes almost 100% of my focus and energy to get that guy out. I can't be worried about, what the person down the left field line is thinking, doing, or screaming. That being said, I think the position that would be affected most by the lack of fans might be hitters. I've thought about this a couple times now. Like, I think as a pitcher, like, the pressure's on already. You need to execute this pitch. You need to throw this, do this, or do that, or get this guy out. Like, a lot of the pressure, I feel like, is your team is relying on you to get it out. A hitter, I don't know this, but I would assume a hitter might, feel more motivated or less motivated, maybe in a tough situation in the eighth with a guy on third versus just bases empty, second inning. But I'm not sure. I don't have a ton of big league at bats, so I might not be the perfect source for that.
Gotcha. That's good insights. Kent would like to know, what are your thoughts on the Houston Astros cheating scandal? Do you feel that the players involved should have also suffered some penalties and suspensions?
Wow, we're just going with the tough
going
questions
deep,
here.
Going hard. Yeah.
Okay, so again, this is something I have put a lot of thought into. I think that before coming to like a real aggressive conclusion on how you feel about the Astros, it's important to put yourself in their shoes. Do I think every player on the Astros is a bad guy who cheats and has just, frauded his way to the top? No, like, I don't believe that. I think that they're probably good guys mostly, and they probably just made the biggest mistake of their lives. And I think they recognize that, and we know that. That being said, they shouldn't be getting off scot-free. I don't know if players should be getting punished because I don't know which players participated. But I do think that you, as fans, are holding them more accountable than anybody. Anything that we could have done to them as an organization or a league doesn't match up to the critique they're facing from the backlash they're facing from fans who feel like they were cheated. So for me, I'm kind of a believer. I never played the Astros last year, right? So it didn't, drastically impact me. It did impact the sport, and that's disappointing. I'm glad that we have solved it. I do believe we have solved it. I think that the rules that will be put in place going forward will be much better. And I think now we're more aware of what's going on. Like all issues that happen in sports, it almost seems like it's almost a lack of awareness that this was wrong, more so than this like aggressive cheating. Now that's not to provide an excuse for them, but now we know. Now there's no excuses. Everyone knows that technology has a role to play in baseball, but you can't take it too far. So don't do it again. And I think that the best way to look at it is they've been punished, and let's move on and just try and enjoy a good season. And personal vendetta.
Awesome. I think we lost you there for a second, but we caught most of that. That was good response, considering we definitely put you on the hot seat. I'm going to give you an easier question here from Malcolm. Malcolm would like to know, he says, your hands and your fingers, they take a beating. How long does it take to lose the pain and stiffness? Now, consider this is coming from a gentleman who's a little bit older than you. So pain and stiffness is probably a big part of, his everyday. You're a little younger, just a year or two younger than Malcolm, but Malcolm would love to know, how do you deal with that kind of pain, Cal?
Okay, so I missed just the very middle. The pain in elbow, pain in fingers, pain in arm.
Sorry.
Where are we talking pain?
He's wondering about your hands and fingers, that they must take a beating and they must get painful and stiff.
Yeah, so I think like anything, someone who runs 10 miles every day has like developed like that you callous yourself. Like, I know we only talk about callousing your fingers or callousing your hands, but you callous your body. You teach your body to accept a certain amount of torture, we'll call it. And for pitchers, for me, this is something that I have been like training my body to accept for the last 15 years. So if you went out and tried to throw 112 pitches at 100 miles an hour 40 times in a year, it might not go well. But we literally,
I could probably do that, but it would, I'm sure I could get that speed, but it would just be a little more painful for me, right? Not.
So how we manage it is, we've got, number one, we've got like some of the best doctors in the world. Number two, we've got incredible physical therapists and people like who are helping us do it. But there's all sorts of different ways. A lot of it's, we call it load management. So the idea is not to go 110% all the time. It's to be as efficient as you can to be. It's about optimizing your output. So if that means that 2 days a week I go 100%, 1 day I take off, and 2 days I go 60%, and that's my perfect, like, optimal output, that's what I'm trying to do, so that I'm not stressing my fingers and my elbow and my shoulder every day to an extent that's not valuable. So that's just one way that we try and like manage pain and stiffness.
That is good advice. I'm going to let Malcolm know he should just try and slow it down a little bit. Maybe not be throwing quite as many pitches while he's, sitting around up in Napanee. He should just take a day off or two here and there, Malcolm. Jeff Shrigley has a question for you. He would like to know, what are your thoughts on custom gloves, and what's your go-to brand and why?
Okay, so I'm sponsored by Nike, so I can't tell you anything other than Nike. I like my Nike glove. That being said, I think that the glove you use is completely dependent on your position. Some brands are known for making better gloves for a certain position than other brands. In terms of, I should preface all this by saying I'm a big believer that the equipment comes secondary or third or fourth in order of most important things. You can see a great player using a terrible glove. That is definitely a thing. There's shortstops who are using a glove that's 8-10 years old because they've just grown so accustomed to it that that's what they like, even though we have definitely making better gloves now than that glove. But in terms of the coolest custom gloves, I got one this year that's pretty awesome. It's like a dark brown with like a hint of red. It kind of matches our jerseys, but it's a little flashy for me. I like it a lot. I think it'll be good once we get playing.
That's awesome. Just so you know, there's a lot of great questions coming in, but there are also a number of great compliments that I would like to share with you before I ask you another question. You're great at interviewing, Cal. Nice work. What an awesomely well-spoken guy. He reminds me of Trudeau, and I think a few people might think you're kind of cute. Someone wanted to know if you're single. I need to eat pizza with this guy, and
I like
suffice
pizza.
to say, everyone's enjoying their time with you so far. So thank you. A few more questions here. Got a great question here from Mike. He would love to know what made you take the college route instead of going right into the Yankees farm system.
So, in my opinion, and I'm not a professional athlete at anything else, but baseball is a sport that takes a long time to compete at the highest level. It's a mature sport. There's a lot of touch and feel, and just it's a very nuanced sport. And for me personally, at 18 years old, I probably wasn't ready for that kind of nuance. I was just coming into my body. I was just becoming a man, and to be thrown into a professional organization and asked to compete against the best in the world might not have been what was best for me at the time. So there are guys who are ready to take that step, and there's guys who I think that if they choose to take that step, sometimes they end up spending almost longer in the minor leagues because they need so much more seasoning. So my approach was, if I think I'm so good, I'm Mr. Tough Guy, I'm the best player in Canada at 18, well, then I should be at least that good in 3 years at a great D1 school. And on top of that, I'm going to come out with a degree. So why wouldn't I do it? It seems like a win-win-win. Now, listen, there are guys who have gone the high school route and had incredible success, but I think that for 90% of people, the correct decision is to go to school. That's a completely biased take. I accept it, but I encourage that route. I think that those years are some of the best years of your life. I think that if you're as good as you think you are, you'll only get better. And I think going to the right school, you'll make memories and really develop that maturity that you're going to need in baseball. Easier, better, happier than doing it at the lowest levels of the minor leagues.
Yeah, and you nailed it, and you've got a degree. And just so you know, with that degree, that would qualify you when you are done playing in the majors. You could apply to work at the Sport and Social Group, and you'd have a really good shot of getting a job with us.
All
Just
right.
saying, because you've got that Stanford degree. Yeah. Otherwise, without that, I don't know. So, next question from Rob. He would love to know which major, and this question got asked of, we had Brian Savage on, a former Montreal Canadiens hockey player, last week, and this question got asked. It's a great question. Which major league city do you look forward to traveling to the most and going out for a beer afterwards, and which one do you dread going to the most?
Okay, so let's eliminate Toronto because that's my favorite. And just so you guys know, if there's a lot of like Ontario people on this right now,
there are, and there's a lot of Toronto Blue Jays fans on this call, just so you know.
People love going to Toronto. Like, this is a common misconception. Most people think that, oh, like they don't want to come to Canada. That might be true the first time because they don't, like, the average American might not know what it's like. And if you're from, Florida, maybe you've never gone to Toronto. But like, without exception, players who go to Toronto only have positive things to say. So let's knock Toronto off because I love Toronto. I'm not a huge like big city guy. So I don't deny that like LA, Chicago, New York were all a lot of fun. But my favorite city that I've played in is Pittsburgh. I thought it was awesome. It was so cool. The field was awesome. It felt like kind of like a working man community. I don't know if that's true. I don't know the demographics of Pittsburgh, but we had a lot of fun. You stay pretty close to the field so you can walk. Yeah, Pittsburgh. I'm sure that's an uncommon and probably unpopular answer, but I like it.
That's awesome. And is there one that you dread going to?
Anywhere that's over 100 degrees. If it's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit and it doesn't have a dome, I'm not excited. I'm not thrilled about what I have to go do.
Great, good stuff. That's great to hear that about Toronto. That's amazing. Raul, I have no idea what this question about the Fox Sports is, so I need more detail there. And I'm going to go to Sandeep's question. He'd love to know, are there any athletes, this is a great question. Sandeep, you always come up with the greatest questions. Are there any athletes in other sports who you look up to as a role model? And if so, why?
Yeah, I think there's like a common denominator again across the board for all great athletes. And that's like an extreme dedication, like a willingness to learn, and like this ability to push yourself harder than other people. And you can find like great role models in sports that have nothing to do with your sport. And it doesn't even have to be a popular sport, right? I'm sure the best squash player in the world has that same drive that Tiger Woods has, or that Mike Trout has, or you name it, right? For me, I've always been a big hockey player guy. Number one, I've always loved hockey, but I think that like what makes a hockey player is like a mix of like toughness and skill. And if you can find a way to take that and put it in any sport, even a sport without fighting and physical contact, if you can be tough, if you can be mean, if you can be like willing to take more beating than someone else, like you will come out on top. So like when I think of players like that, and I mean, and so I don't know, I always seem to go back. Like I always loved Carlos Delgado and Sean Green as baseball players. As hockey players, I always loved Ty Domi, Matt Sundin, like those kind of players with the Leafs back in the day. I think like players now who you can see have that same approach. I guess like if you just watch the football draft or you're into football, I knew Christian McCaffrey a little bit at school. Like he has that drive where it's like he's willing to do stuff that other people aren't willing to do. That's why he's Christian McCaffrey. It's not that these people are born with like abilities that you don't have. Yes, one person might be taller and one person might be faster, but like your ability to just wear it and just deal with the pain and the things that other people don't want to do seems to be the separator from what I can tell.
Awesome. That's great. Well, if you love hockey, just so you know, we've got Vinny Damphousse from the Montreal Canadiens coming on next week, and we've got Jeremy Roenick in a couple weeks joining us. If you want to come and join us and ask them some questions, we'd love to have you. Another question that we've got here, Cal, is, and I'm going to be honest, I don't totally understand this question because I think I told you I don't know a lot about baseball, much to my father's disappointment. Probably the biggest Jays fan ever. He was a season's ticket holder for a couple of years, and he lives in Sudbury, if you can believe that, like 4 hours north of Toronto. Anyway, so I don't really understand what this question is, but I'm going to ask it. If you got bat flipped, would you throw it at a team? I'm assuming you know what this means.
Yeah. Okay. This has become like a super popular question lately. Everybody wants the game to be more exciting. Everyone wants you to hit a home run and then throw your bat up in the air like Jose Bautista did and make a big old scene. Personally, it's not how I like to play the game. However, I am completely okay with it as long as you're okay with when I strike you out, I get to make a scene on the mound. If you want to bat flip me for the home run, when I strike you out, I'm going to do a little twirl on the mound and laugh at you. Like, it's all just like, okay, be reasonable. Like, if you want to embarrass me, then I'll embarrass you. But I don't think the answer is trying to hurt people. Like, you hitting a home run off me is your job. Me hitting you in the neck, that's not my job, and it's borderline not right. So, no, don't hit people that are being, I'm not going to use bad words here. Don't hit people that are being rude. Just be rude right back at them. Just be better than them.
Awesome. Okay, we got like 2 more questions that I'm gonna go to here from the crowd, and I got one for you to wrap us up. I don't want to keep you any longer. Do you have any superstitious routines that you go through before a game?
I have routines. I personally don't think they're superstitious. You guys might. I try and avoid the superstition as much as I can. I think that people who add too many of those to their game, then you put yourself in a position where if something goes wrong, say there's a rain delay or whatever, just things aren't perfect. Now you've put yourself in a spot where you're behind everyone else because you need all these things to go right. Your left sock has to come on before your right sock. What if your left sock has a hole in it? You're a bad player because your left sock had a hole in it? Like, so for me, I try and like rationalize everything. The only things I do are things that I think will make me better that day, and that there's proof that they make me better that day. Warming up, consistently throwing a similar amount of pitches in the bullpen, having a similar like timeline as I approach the game, how I sleep the night before, what I eat. Those things are all, we have shown that has a big difference. I have a hard time believing that the left foot before the right foot does. But if you need it, you do it. Just make sure you keep it, sane.
So suffice to say, you're okay with washing your socks and stuff between games.
Oh yeah, I'm not putting my socks on twice. No.
Jeff would love to know, have you ever thought about life after baseball and what that might entail in regards to an occupation?
Yeah, that's the whole point of going to the school I went to. For me, I feel like sports can be a big part of your entire life. I think that you guys probably stand for that. Like, if you can be playing sports at 70, that's great. But in terms of like what I want to do post baseball, I think I recognized at an early age that professional sports can be taken away from you quite quickly. I tore my UCL when I was 19 years old, and that's a borderline career-ending injury. Luckily, surgery went well, and I was able to come back. But for me, like, I've always kind of kept in the back of my head things I like to do. One thing I actually like to do is talk shop, talk baseball, talk sports with people. Maybe that's something I'd be capable and want to do. Something more in line with what my degree was probably just to go into engineering. I'm not sure if I'd want to be, full on engineer, maybe more on the business side of it. But I'm sure at this point, everything I've learned is obsolete. So maybe I'd have to go back to school if I want to do that.
Well, Cal, I got to say, based on the feedback you've gotten here from the comments, and I'll say it myself, you're a very well-spoken young man. And I would suspect if you wanted to get a career in talking about baseball, you won't have much trouble doing so. This has been an absolute joy. Before we wrap up, I'm going to ask you one more question. Oh, and do remember, you don't need to go back to school if you want to get a job with the Sport and Social group when we get people playing again. So, but do remember, sorry, the last question I want to ask you, Cal, is when you do come back to Toronto, when you're all done, because you did say you'd like to get back to Canada when baseball is done. We're not going to let you play in our softball leagues. However, we'd love you to come and play something else. What would that other sport be? We can offer you basketball, volleyball, dodgeball, hockey.
Nope.
All right. Not dodgeball,
actually, hey, if dodgeball's on there, I feel like that could be fun. It might be a little unfair. I feel like that'd be like, that might hurt somebody.
You could be dangerous. Yeah.
No, hockey for sure.
You could be dangerous on a dodgeball.
There was a time in my life where I thought I was actually good at hockey. It turns out that's not true. But I did play a little AAA hockey in Clarington. I was decent. I would gladly get back on the ice. I think if I was good enough at hockey, I might have chose it over baseball. I liked it that much.
Awesome. Well, hey, listen, I don't want to keep you any longer. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today, for giving us your time. Before we completely leave the meeting, I am going to unmute everyone so they can just shout out a thank you and a good, best wishes to you. Graham, can you do that?
I love it.
We have to do that. There we go. Everyone's microphones are turned off. So thank you, Cal, for joining us.
Well done. Have a good one.
Have a great day.
Everyone.
Very cute.
Will not hurt your health.
All right.
Yeah. All right, guys. Stay safe.
Cal.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Cal. Take care.
Yep. See you guys.